Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and I hope you're getting really excited for my Best Games of 2023 video. This will be my 7th annual one, and most of the people who give me feedback keep saying that every year I just keep getting better and better, so no pressure for 2025's video. Esabelle and I have been working on this particular video for roughly a year now. It was around December of 2023 that we started working on this, and thankfully, she has been really patient with me when I got a new idea for how to make it better, or I said, I don't know about this game anymore, because my opinions have changed, or another game has come out that's made it better, etc. So I normally don't like doing honorable mentions, and because of what I just told you guys, that's why we had 2 honorable mentions this year, because I don't want to spoil what I have in mind for this video, but let's just say that I have tried to take advantage of Esabelle's acting and professional editing, and as a result she ended up doing some acting and professional editing that didn't quite make it into the top 10. And so I wanted to have a chance to explain my reasoning here, so that it doesn't take up too much time in the video, so that if you're complaining, Paul, why didn't you talk about the honorable mentions games? You can watch this video instead. And I'll have it in the end card, just in case you don't watch this video in time. So let's stop talking and get to the 2 games that she filmed for that didn't quite make the list. My history with the Mario and Luigi franchise has not been great. The only one that I've actually beaten is the Bowser's Inside Story remake. If you're wondering why I didn't play the DS version, back then I thought the concept was so stupid and weird. I didn't like trying things that were too unusual back then. It took me a long time before I even started liking indie games, for that matter. So when it came around to the 3DS, I thought, this'll be my chance to finally redeem myself. And no other Mario and Luigi game has even come close. Superstar Saga was the one that I actually got to the final battle, but then I gave up because it was way too much of a difficulty spike. I heard that it was better in the remake, but I never got past the first area in the remake because I guess I was just getting kind of burnt out by how repetitive it was. I don't actually remember my full reasoning. I know I tried replaying Superstar Saga on Switch Online, and I got tired of how repetitive that was, and I got to, I believe it was Hoo Hoo Village, before I realized the game's map system was too weird, and I kept getting lost and turned around, and the enemies kept respawning when I would go back the way I came, and I just said, to heck with this, I'm out of here. So when I got to Brothership, I thought that maybe the fact that it was on the Switch would end up fixing a lot of the issues and help me actually get into the series. And for a while it did. And so I'd like to start with the positives of Brothership, as I do believe that it started out great, but then gradually got worse as I went along. First off, Kevin Afghani, he's absolutely phenomenal in this game. There were several points where I forgot that it wasn't Charles, because I think he's finally figured out how to nail his Mario voice. He was always good as Luigi, but I think he's kind of perfected it here. And he actually does the gibberish really well. A lot of people were concerned, like, oh, that was Charles's deal. How are they ever going to replace him? But he does a pretty darn good job of it. I like the music. I love real instruments. I love jazz music. And this game, I think every single track is performed by real instruments, at least the ones that I heard. I think the ones near the end get a bit more funky, but I could not find a track during my playthrough that wasn't performed by real instruments, and it was phenomenal. Not quite to the level of, say, Mario RPG or the Thousand Year Door remakes, but it was still pretty solid. The battle plugs were pretty cool. I liked how they were kind of like mini badges from the Paper Mario series, but to prevent them from being too overpowered, they had to recharge after a certain number of uses, and so that added some nice strategy to the battles. And I do think the overall theme of working together and building connections is great. As a Catholic, I love the idea of everyone working together. We believe in a communion of saints, after all. So whenever I see games where there's a lot of emphasis on friendship, I know that's an overused cliche in anime, but it just makes me smile every time I see a game where the bonds of friendship or siblingship is the key to solving a crisis. However, the biggest problem I had with Brothership was its length. It was just so darn long and slow, and couple that together, and it just wasn't an enjoyable time. Now you might be thinking, now wait a minute, Paul. You've reviewed games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Persona 5 Royal. Those are also RPGs that are also really long. So why do you give those a pass and not Brothership? Because those games have engaging stories that make you want to keep going because you want to see how it gets resolved. In Brothership, there were moments that were cool, but the overall story was kind of bland. Like, at first it started out promising, saying, oh, hey, you gotta restore the island because it was broken apart by this evil curse, and now you gotta go to the islands and reconnect them. I'm like, okay, so it's got world building. That's already a step up from Paper Jam. It had unique characters, albeit they're all looking like spark plugs, so it's kind of the generic Toad approach, but not. Okay, I'll give that a pass. But then, when you reconnected the 100th Lighthouse Island, I know I'm exaggerating, but it felt like it was 100 times, because some of them got disconnected during the events of the plot, and then you'd have to reconnect them again. Oh, the backtracking was terrible. People complain about the backtracking in Thousand Year Door. Play this game first, then come back to me and complain about the Thousand Year Door backtracking, especially if you've seen how the remake addressed it. I wish this game had learned from the Thousand Year Door remake, because there's so much re-exploration of areas you've already been to, and near the end, when the game made it out like it was going to end, it said, hey, this is the final battle, be prepared. Nope, wasn't the final battle, it was a fake out, and there were like at least 5 more hours to go when I just said, okay, I'm sick of this, I'm out of here. The reason why I considered Brothership being on the list in the first place was because it was fun. The combat was enjoyable, the loading screens going in and out of combat weren't, and they did add up, and that's probably why I got fatigued. Also, I hate to say it, but I think the fact that this game came out in November also contributed to a little bit of burnout, as I didn't want to make myself or Esabelle feel like we were too much in a hurry to get the videos out. And so I was like, oh, Esabelle, I'm sorry, but this game just keeps going and going, and I need to hurry up and finish it so that we can do the video. And I've done that with games in the past, but the difference with those games is that I was actually enjoying myself the whole time, like Hogwarts Legacy, for example. That game just barely made it onto my list last year. And it got number 3, too, so it must have been a really darn good time, but not Brothership. Anyway, I've spent too much time talking about this, but I hope I've gone enough in depth as to why it was good, but not good enough to be on the list, and not good enough to review. With the next honorable mention, I actually did review it. But now let's hear my reasonings as to why it's only an honorable mention and not in the top 10. When I first heard about Endless Ocean Luminous, I was really thankful that Nintendo was bringing back this series, as I had one of the Endless Ocean games on the Wii. I believe it was Blue World. But for some reason I never got around to playing it, and I believe the reason why was because I just didn't want to have to deal with the Wii Remote taking batteries. And so when the Switch version came along, I thought, oh good, now I can see what all the fuss was about. And from what I've heard from people that have actually played those Wii games, this game basically fails in just about every department at recapturing the magic. Coming from a newbie's perspective, I thought the idea of the game was intriguing, as first of all, I love swimming, I love the water, I love body positivity, and even though you're not in a swimsuit per se, you're still in a watery setting. I also love games that promote exploration. I love the first and third Xenoblade Chronicles games, really excited for Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. I love Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. As much as I love Twilight Princess, one thing that I hated about that game was that there were walls everywhere. Like, you'd go in Ordon Village and you'd look around and you'd see all these trees in the background, but you couldn't get to them because they were just background decorations. Whereas in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you see something, you can get to it. And I loved how that just made it so much more fun to actually traverse the world. And so Endless Ocean, I thought, well, okay, this will just be an underwater Breath of the Wild. And at first, I thought people would make the comparison to Subnautica. And I thought, well, Subnautica seems a bit too complicated for me from what I've seen of the gameplay. So I am going to come at this from the approach of a casual explorer who just wants to discover stuff and have fun. And at that, this game succeeded for the most part. It was fun to discover all the different structures, like an underwater cave. Well, everything's underwater. Like a cave, an abandoned ship. The graphics were really nice. The fish models looked really good. and it was nice that you got facts about the fish, even if I'm kind of surprised that some of them got into an E-rated game, because there's some surprisingly sexual stuff that they reveal. However, there's not much more to the game besides scanning fish. Occasionally you'll have these mysteries that you have to solve, but a lot of them are really simple, like find enough items, bring a fish to this location, like really mundane stuff, and a lot of it is randomly generated, just like the ocean is for that matter. So there's not a whole lot of consistency or strategy when it comes to seeking out how to solve the mysteries. What's even worse is that the story mode is absolutely atrocious. Even after I gave a glowing review of this game, and even after I was so impressed by the exploration that I said I want this on the list, I don't care what the critics say, I could not defend that story mode. Because first off, your narrator is done by AI voice acting. That was already a turn off, because I was like, this sounds so terrible. Was this game rushed or something? Or is AI just taking over good voice acting? And your companion character, he doesn't have a voice, he just says, "Lol, lol, lol." I kid you not, that's exactly how he sounds. Go and watch a clip if you don't believe me. Your character is silent, of course, so why even bother having a story mode? They tried to set up this grand narrative about, like, this tree underwater that serves as the connector to all living beings. It was a snooze fest. And a lot of the story mode levels were actually just tutorials where you didn't even play the game, you just listened to people talk. And when you did have tutorials, it restricted where you could swim, and it felt very artificial, like you'd get these invisible walls that said you can't go any further. Which I absolutely hate it when games do that. I like the freedom. So to defeat the whole point of why it's called Endless Ocean was really getting on my nerves. But what finally got me to go, I quit, this is terrible, was when, in order to unlock the final level of the story mode, you have to complete all 99 mysteries. Considering the random nature of the game, I was just not having it. I thought I was safe to review it because the game gives you the options to view the credits at any time, and I figured there's nothing really going on in the story that I can't just do in the main game. I'm just scanning fish. The only thing that's happening is that I'm hearing this annoying AI voice all the time. And the AI voice is still there in the main in the main mode when you scan the fish, but thankfully I turned it off, and that significantly increased my enjoyment. But then I realized that as much fun as it was, it started getting worse the more that I did it. Because I started to realize, okay, if the ocean is procedurally generated, that means I'm going to start seeing the same landmarks over and over again, and the feeling of discovery is going to feel less impactful. And then scanning fish was only fun for so long before I started to not want to know all the facts about the fish. I was like, some of this is okay, but it's not very interesting. Maybe if the game had a well-designed ocean, like, say, I don't know, like what Wind Waker did, but underwater, that would be cool. And from what I've heard, they actually took out quite a lot of features that made the original Endless Ocean game so memorable. You can no longer pet the animals, you can't make your own music for the game like you could on the Wii because it had SD card capabilities. I think you could like explore an aquarium in the original versions, and that's out of the picture. The only thing that I can think of that this game might have done better based on what I've seen of those old games is that it looks really nice. But from what I heard, those Wii games also looked nice for a Wii game. So it's an utter failure as a sequel in just about every way. And it took out all the danger elements that people liked from Blue World. So even though I really liked the no stakes approach, like I liked how you couldn't run out of oxygen, I liked how none of the fish could hurt you, I do still think that players who are fans of the old games would have liked that as an option, or at least have been able to interact with the fish in any way besides just being an observer. So Endless Ocean was fun for a bit, especially when I went online and got to search for treasure with other people in real life. But once I realized these randomly generated oceans are only just going to keep repeating themselves, that's when I realized, what was I thinking when I reviewed this game? This game is not good, and it's not worthy of being on the list. I do still think that you could probably have fun if you rented it, but don't go out and pay the $60 that Nintendo is charging for it. Nintendo, I really hope that you learn your lesson about pricing when you do your next system. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I hope you end up enjoying the final video. Please let me know if you're outraged that I didn't include these games in the top 10 and why you think that I should finish Brothership even though it drags out, and why maybe I was too unfair about Endless Ocean. That AI voice acting and procedurally generated oceans and a terrible story mode is actually Game of the Year material. Let me know down in the comments, just keep it civil, that's all I ask. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!